Hello, everyone, and welcome to another workshop in this Cybertruck workshop series this semester. And today we're going to be talking about object injection. So, just a following disclaimer, the following video may or may not contain tools and techniques used by hackers to penetrate and infect computer systems, servers, and personal mobile devices. And the purpose of these videos is to demonstrate how these attacks work so you can protect yourself from them. Also, to raise awareness of important cybersecurity issues in today's world. Techniques and tools learned from this video should only be performed on systems you have explicit permission to do so. UC Merced Q Project, Tech Equation Inc., nor the presenter, nor of his affiliates are responsible or not responsible for any malicious use of this information. Now, we're going to start with deserialization. So, serialization is basically it turns in a programmatic um, object into a format that is to be sent or stored into a database. And this is usually a string. And deserialization is the exact opposite. Just a quick note serialization, when you're turning an object into something like a string, it's not only for storage, but also to be sent via an HTTP request or um, in the URL, which we'll go look into a little bit later. So this is a quick visualization of serialization and deserialization, where the programmatic object in the language, specific language, gets transformed into a stream of bytes, aka a string, goes into a file, database, or just a memory, and then for deserialization, it takes all that stream of bytes and turns it into an object. Now we're going to talk about serialization in PHP, where this vulnerability, which I'm going to talk about, is mostly found. So we have this PHP class. It's called user class. There's a username and then a status. And here making, we're initializing a new user object and setting the username to Vicky and the status to not admin. And then we're going to use the serialized method on user. How what this will output is the bottom element here, 04 user 2, all that stuff. And so how serialization works is there's different key string characters that denote specific objects. For example, B is for Boolean, I is for the integer, and if you keep going down, we have O for the object. So here we have an object with four uh, elements. The first one would be the class name. The second would be the number of properties. There would be two properties, the username status. The first one is S, which is a string. The length is 8. You have the username name here. And then you got um, Vicky. You got status. Status is for the other property. And then you got not admin. So Vicky is the element in that's assigned to the property of user in this specific object. Now we're going to be looking at the unserialized function in PHP under the hood. It uses PHP magic methods, as they're called, underscore wake up or underscore destruct. So unserialized basically calls upon these methods which are vulnerable. What wake up does, it reconstructs any resources that the object may have and also wakes up any database connections if needed. Then the project does whatever to the object, whatever it needs to do, the script, blah, 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 everything. And then destruct is to clean up the object when there's no reference to it in the program, usually when you already turned it back into a string or you just did a simple read from the database. Now, the objective is to control the values of the serialized string. So maybe if you change the value of the string, then it'll deserialize into an object that can perform a RCE, which is a remote code exploit. So perhaps we have This is the actual deserialized string, the serialized string. Now we want to maybe modify this part from not admin to admin, which will give Vicky admin status. So we're going to look into an RCE example. This was taken from the WASP website, so you can look at that. So we have here an example two, which is a class. We have the private hook, and we overrid the wake up function. So in the wake up function, it's basically saying if this hook exists, if you can get the hook, then um, evaluate the hook property of example two. And then what this is going to do, it's going to unserialize the data from cookie, the data element from cookie, and cookie is a example two um, type of object. And so how RCE is going to work, the routine. First, you're going to pass the serialized example two object into the program as the data cookie. And when the program calls unserialize, it invokes the wake up function. And because it invokes the wake up function because the cookie variable is part of the example two class. And so when the wake up variable looks for the hook property of the object and sets it to null, otherwise it just evaluates the hook, basically gets this data right here, and it's run. And when that's run, then we achieve RCE because you can put any kind of function into here and it will be exploited. So this is how the HTTP request is going to be made. So you have the cookie and then you have the data value of the cookie, and this is the URL encoded form of the one below. So basically, you have the object of example two, uh, you have the hook, and then you have the code exploit, which is the PHP info. So this is a serialized string that you send in there, and when it unserializes, it basically makes a new object, deserializes this string into an object. So some important terms what I'm going to talk about when you have to protect yourself against this is whitebox review. It's when you have the source code visible. CTFs and other cyber competitions are usually whitebox. They give you the source code. And now black box review is basically the opposite of white box review, where you don't have access to source code and you have to protect yourself, or you have to do some testing without knowing the source code. So how do you protect yourself from object injection? So we're going to talk about PHP since that's what I gave this workshop on. So in PHP, you want to do a white box. All right, in the white box scenario where you know the source code, you want to check the use of unserialized, and you may also want to use JSON instead of just strings, instead of serializing strings, because JSON is considered a safe standard data exchange format. And you can use JSON decode and JSON encode instead of unserialized and serialized and deserialized. In Python, in a black box scenario, usually a period at the end is usually meant with a data being sent out with serialization, often an attack against your system. And then a white box review, there's a couple of vulnerable uses. For example, using the pickle with load and loads, PyYAML with load, JSON pickle with encode of store methods. They're all vulnerable use cases with object injection. Now, this is my works cited, and now I'm going to do a quick workshop. Now, I am going to share the Dice CTF challenge, missing flavor. So all credit goes to the ICTF. They made this wonderful challenge. So this is the code that they gave us. So this is a white box or black box. Does anyone have an answer to that?
White.
White box. Do you know why?
They show you the code.
Yeah, exactly. So they show us the source code. So basically, what's happening? It creates a new table and says admin, and this is the route we have to do. So it'll make a post request, um, and it'll get the username and the password. And if it includes a colon, basically it'll say um, you can't do this, or it'll redirect you to the home site because you cannot. Because in order to do SQL injection, you need to have a colon. So here, this is deserialization. So when we're doing object injection, what's going to happen is we send. Um, we're going to put an object inside the password field, and when we put an object inside the password field, it will read. Um, this will turn out false because this will be like an array, or it'll be an object which does not include a colon because it's not a string. And when you deserialize it, it'll turn into something like this, which you'll be able to, um, which will deserialize the array object into simply just a string. So we'll see that right now in Node, and then we'll test it out. So let me share my screen again. So let's open Node. So we'll set password to a simple SQL injection string. So we have the um, for the one single quote which will be used in the SQL injection during the SQL injection, and this will be both. This will be inside a double string, a double quote, and inside a array, which would be a object. So this would be or 1 - 1 equals 1, like that. Now let's try to do it like this. Let's see if the actual string like this, if you put in the password field in the login form, if it'll work. See, if you do this, dot includes, we'll do this says true because in this string it senses a, or it finds a single quote. But in order to avoid that, what if we put the actual, make an object? And that's what's going to happen right here, because when we input it here, it's going to spit out false, and thus it'll be able to come to this stage. Now, this is deserialization right here. So let's deserialize this object. So let's deserialize the password object. So we'll have where, this and password equals, I have to use this. Oops. Where password equals password, and that'll turn up, and password equals this object right here. And what's that object? Basically, um, it's the, it ends the single quote right here, and starts a or 1 equals 1. Basically, that's our SQL injection, and this semicolon dash dash basically negates this single quote. That's a outlier right here, and this gets injected. So let's look at, so I wasn't aware that I was not sharing the code, but Let me first share that to see where this would go. So you have the object that's here, right? At this point, it will not, this will come out false because it doesn't see the quote into an object. And then when here, it'll get deserialized, and then you'll be able to get the admin password. So let's test this out on the actual website. This is the missing flavor challenge from Dice CTF 2021. So if you go here, um, admin, oh, we don't need that. Let's try put or. It would be single quote space or space one equals one semicolon dash dash. And look, it didn't work. So what we need to do is inject the object, and how that works is we're going to use a secondary client to make the API requests. So let me pull up that. So you have this. You're going to make a post request at the login endpoint. You have username equals admin, and then you have password. Uh, this makes the password as an object, and then you pass that, and when you send it, you get your flag right here. So how it works is it sends the URL encoded form of password. This turns into, and then when it deserializes into the um, node, or when JavaScript deserializes it, it counts it as an array. And then as we saw in the terminal, the array actually turns into just a simple string when deserialized into a string, into the string object. And we are able to perform SQL injection at that point. So that was my workshop. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Um, if you guys would like, all right, please like and subscribe. And of course, check us out next time. Thank you.